Hello, dear Shen enthusiasts. I am Soy, a master Shen main, and let me tell you, it is a good time to be a Shen main right now. Split 3 is among us. All of our items got changed. The meta is going to shift. And looking at some of the stats right now, Shen, well, obviously, that's not a lot of games played already, but he is sitting at a 53% win rate. And I expect it to go down a little bit, but I do think that the champion is extremely broken right now. So savor those 2 weeks while you can. I played 2 games earlier, and I've done a lot of testing in the practice tool. And yeah, I'm just gonna be telling you what I think the item meta is going to be looking like, or what you should build. And I've created a little item set for you to use. Uh, Yeah, basically all of the items on the left I think are very good. All the ones on the right are very bad or very situational. Uh, yeah, everything's categorized for the stats that you want and need. The top ones being more common, and the bottom ones being more off meta. But yeah, let's just get into it. Well, first of all, actually, the runes got changed, which is going to change what you want to build a bit, as Shield Bash's HP ratio got changed, and it is really insane. You deal so much damage now with Shield Bash, although you lose the resistances. I don't think it really matters. It's just how much damage you gain. If you ever play with approach velocity cookies, which I think is a very good rune page into a lot of range matchups, where you need the movement speed to catch up to them, and some early sustain, cookies now give you 90 flat HP. So yeah, consider that rune page if you are ever in any of these matchups. Yeah, going to want to build Doran's shield pretty much every game. I mean, you could go Doran's blade diff, but you don't really use these stats as well unless you just outright solo kill your opponent. It's just not gonna scale as well, and in more even matchups, it's going to set you quite behind. Oh yeah. After that, you pretty much always want a wave clear option. For lane Shen, you pretty much always want either Bami Cinder or Titanic Hydra. Now, if you're confident and you feel like you can get ahead in the early game and you want to carry games, I'm always going to recommend Titanic Hydra. It lost some AD, gained some HP, which is perfect for Shen because you use the HP better than the AD. Now, you use the auto attacks a lot, but you obviously don't have any AD scalings. Now, the problem with Titanic Hydra is it's extremely expensive. The components, apart from Giant's Belt, feel really bad. Like Titanic is just a more expensive, squishier Bamis, which you might not like as much. So in that case, I would always build Bami Cinder, which got changed around a little bit. It's now 900 gold, meaning you get it a lot earlier. Well, obviously 100 gold doesn't sound that big, but if you are maybe not farming that well in a more difficult matchup, now you get it on the second cannon wave, or if you're farming really well, you get it on the fifth wave, right before the cannon wave, which is generally, these 2 waves are generally where you're looking to get a reset. So the 100 gold can make a massive difference there if you are just on the right amount of gold to get the recall in. Now, Bami is by far your strongest early power spike because you really need wave clear, and this now is a bit more flat uh, wave clear in the early game. It has a bit of a high damage amplifier towards minions as well, but it loses its scaling, which means that, well, before you might have wanted to sit on it and not really upgrade it, you do still want to upgrade it later on. Now, I wouldn't recommend you build Hollow Radiance or Sunfire just yet. Personally, I would go for heartsteel first, which, with all of the changes to your HP ratio, is now a very good item where before I kind of disliked it, as well as some other Shen mains. But now most of us are building heartsteel. Just a lot of HP, gives you scaling, which otherwise you don't really have. Otherwise Shen feels like he falls off mega hard and can't really compete in the mid to late game. With heartsteel, he does. Now you do lose some of the HP scaling with Hollow Radiance and Sunfire, but you do want to be building the second. Now a little trick that a lot of Shen players, I don't see them abuse, actually use components to your advantage. Because so often the problem you have with building Sunfire is you need some magic resist, or if you build Hollow Radiance, you need some armor. And what I would do is do like a Negatron Cloak with Sunfire, or do Bramble, or Warden's Mail, or Chain Vest together with Hollow Radiance. I think you want to go Sunfire if you build a magic item as your third item, or Hollow Radiance if you want to build an armor item as your third item. Because now the items are much more similar. Well, before I felt like with heartsteel, you really wanted Sunfire over Hollow Radiance because the damage amplification just what felt so much better with the HP got from heartsteel. Now there's no more damage amplification and the ratio is the same. Now Hollow Radiance has a little bit less base damage, but more wave clear with the Desolate explosion passive thingy. I think the items are very similar, so what it comes down to is what you want to build as your third item. Or let's say the enemy doesn't have any magic damage, then obviously you want to go for Sunfire and the other way around. Now I think for your third item, if you want to go for armor, Titanic is by far your best magic resist choice. With the exception of Abyssal Mask, but Abyssal Mask is very situational. Abyssal Mask is great if you have a lot of magic damage on your team and a lot of magic resistance on the enemy team. If the enemy team doesn't have magic resistance, you don't really benefit from Abyssal Mask, and if you don't have much magic damage on your team, you get the idea. And it lost some of it, well, it lost the passive where you gained more magic resistance the more enemies were around you. So that pushes it away from an overall good item even more to just being very situational. But in those situations where you can tell your Evelyn to skip Void stuff because you have Abyssal Mask, just fight together, it is also such a really good item. Quite cheap as well. And the stats, not amazing, but you get a lot of haste, which I really like about Abyssal Mask. Because generally here, you like a lot of haste. And then, yeah, all of the other ones are more situational. I think Spirit Visage is pretty bait. Sure, you have a lot of shield on your passive, but first of all, it's a very selfish item. It's not shield power like the support items. And the stats, you just gain more effective HP or better passives through any of these other items to the left. And then Force of Nature is kind of awkward because League of Legends is a quick game. You're generally not standing fighting people for 20 seconds to get your full steadfast passive off. But in situations where you do feel like you are fighting very long with magic damage dealers, do consider Force of Nature over Canik Rocken. But generally, this is going to be a better choice when you're in doubt. Now, Wit's End is mainly just for if you're 1v9ing and you want the tenacity and you already have Titanic Hydra, so you benefit from the attack speed. But most games, it's not going to be ideal. And I have QSS on here, not because I'm trolling, but, well, maybe. But mainly because it invalidates champions like Nocturne entirely. And some people are confused by that, but I think that Shen is actually one of the best counter picks into Nocturne. Even though some people are really scared of the champion and really hate him when they play Shen. I think if you get QSS and Nocturne tries to ult on your carries in the side lane, and you press this item and you remove his near side and you just ult on them anyway, Nocturne will always die. And sure, his ult cooldown is smaller, but this makes it so difficult for him to play. So it's mega niche, but in the niche, when it's good, it's so OP. Yeah, just keep that in mind if you're ever against a champion like that. But yeah, to the armor items. Bramble Vest gets a little bit more flat magic damage now, which is great. And Iceborne Gauntlet got a huge buff. It actually does 150% base physical damage, which if you have a couple more levels, can actually be quite a lot. It's a very nice damage option, and it lets you chase champions so well. It's so nice to have, because when you can't actually get behind your opponent to get the drag through, now with the slow, you're actually able to get your blade placed through them a lot more consistently. And before I didn't really like the item because it didn't slot in so well with the other armor options, but with the buffs I think now it's going to be a very strong core item for Shen. Randuin's very self-explanatory. It lost its rock solid passive, but that's not what you build the item for. You build Randuin's because the enemy has 2-3 crit champions, and the crit reduction along with the stats and the slow is really insane. Now, Deadman's Blade is actually one of the most misunderstood items on Shen, and if you've watched Shen players like Expetu, you might see them run this a lot. So what a lot of people don't know, to this day people think this has a slow, which it doesn't have for like 2 years. And people don't know that actually that item doesn't just proc when you had 100 stacks. It actually deals 28% of the damage if you only stack it at 28 stacks. So when you're moving between auto attacks, you're constantly stacking it. And usually you have like 21, 28 stacks between auto attacks. Obviously more if you have boots. So yeah, this item is not actually just for the movement speed and the stats, which admittedly are pretty bad. This is also a damage item. It deals way more than you expect because it doesn't have a counter, but if you actually go into a replay or go into a game and count how much damage this does, it's really significant, which is hard to feel, because you only feel, quote unquote, the first auto attack, which is the mega bonk, which is when you go in for the 100 stack auto attack. So yeah, I would consider Deadman's Blade, especially if you play a super high tempo playstyle together with a good wave clear item like Hollow Radiance. Like, this is the Petu build. And you just run around the map super quickly, especially if you're mid. This build is actually really good because you clear waves and you can roam. And this item is a lot stronger than people actually expect, especially because they don't utilize the passive properly. How a lot of lower elo Shen players play is they play like this, instead of playing like this. So I see a lot when I coach people. But anywho's, moving on. Frozen Heart. Now, I wouldn't worry too much about the fact that this has mana, because even mana champions don't really run by the time they get this item. So you're mainly looking at the Winter's Caress passive, which, if the enemy is only dealing damage with auto attacks, this is 20% damage reduction for your entire team. Yeah. I don't know how the meta will change if we shift away from crit AD carries to like Blade of the Rune King on hit meta again. Then Frozen Heart will be a lot more common. For now, it is really niche. You don't really run into games a lot where you love the passive. But yeah. And Rock Solid, we will miss you a lot. Unending Despair. Out of all of the tanks, Shen is the worst Unending Despair user. Because just with the way you play, it is... You're not a drain tank, right? Maybe there's some games where the enemy is low DPS and this turns you invincible. Otherwise, I wouldn't really consider unending despair. And the reason I thorn mail this far to the right is actually it did get changed. Now it gives you more armor and less HP, which is pretty good if you go for like a heartsteel build, since you're looking to get more resistance than HP. But it lost a lot of its scaling, entire 10%, and I think this a lot of people get baited into buying the item because let's look, if you're just sitting at Bramble Vest, you get 150 HP, which is just the ruby crystal, and 50 armor, which is a bit more than the chain vest. But essentially, you're just getting components, which you could use to build other items. And you're not getting more anti-heal. People always say, oh, I like Thornmail when people have anti-heal. Well, that's what Bramble Vest already does. It's already 40%. And the extra damage increase is really negligible unless you have a lot of armor. Which is why I will always finish Thornmail as the very last item. Unless I feel like I'm in a very low economy game and just need my power spike when I can't get any other item in time. So, keep that in mind. And before we get to some of the other builds, well, this is going to be your core. This is what you're going to be building. Pretty much every game, if you don't branch out into anything else. This is all you need. So let's get to the boots, which were also changed. And first of all, Ionian boots lost some haste. Earlier they lost some summoner spell haste as well. I think the nerfs to summoner spell haste don't really matter that much. It sucks now that you lose a glowing mode of ability haste. But I think Shen really needs ability haste, especially early on. Ionians actually help you with your ult a lot and help you get more Q procs. Well, usually it's only until very later on that you get multiple casts of E and then W. I think ability haste is a very underrated stat on Shen. It's very important to have. And the thing people will often say is, well, I need resistance. I like the early resistance that the other boots give me. The thing is, Ionian boots are so cheap. You can buy them, and for the same cost as plated steel caps, you get Ionians and cloth armor. For the same cost as Merc Treads, which are so expensive now, you can actually get Ionians and a null magic mantle. And the reason I don't like the resistance boot is for Mercs, because tenacity is kind of a fake stat, because as a tank, you're supposed to be able to shrug off a lot of the crowd control. And into a lot of CC, it actually doesn't do anything, because, for example, this doesn't work against knockups or suppressions and whatnot. And with steel caps, I think that it's often a lot more valuable to just build into other armor components. In my experience, the damage reduction on the auto attacks is actually a lot less than you might expect. Again, depends on the kind of champions, the meta that you run into. Obviously, if the enemy team is full AD, full auto attackers, I will go for steel caps. And same thing with magic resistance. That's just one thing to keep in mind. And then everything else, yeah, unless you're playing River Shen or some off-meta build, or you're already mega ahead and you just want to run Ash down, you can maybe go Swifties. Swifties always have a super high win rate, but that's obviously just from games where players are already very far ahead. Now, onto these support items. The support Shen playstyle has kind of fallen into irrelevance as Shending Help stopped playing it, and so a lot of other people got bored of the build. It's not as fun. But in those games where your AD carry is going 10-0 and all you have to do is peel for him and he will win you the game, it is still an insane build. Some people think it got nerfed. It didn't really. This is still going to be your core. Some games you're gonna want Locket first instead of Redemption, because Redemption did lose some HP. So if you go just Redemption, you're gonna feel super squishy. But other than that, you want Redemption Locket first, then Moonstone to amplify everything. The passive got nerfed a little bit, but it generally doesn't matter. If you ult someone with these items, your shield is so big that you're basically KO ulting them. And all the other support items in this row are just... they don't really hold up or are too situational to where I would not really recommend them. Now, so to some of the for fun builds, or the 1v9 builds. I can't really rate them very well, so I just have them sorted by gold cost. But a very underrated item is Novori. If you say build Titanic and you popped off and you 10-0 and you just want to carry the game, I think Novori is insane. Because what it does is reduces your taunt cooldown by so much that you can just permanently taunt people. Like here, I don't really have much ability haste. You're going to buy other things. But when you have a lot of abilities, you basically impregnate a Gragas taunt edition. That's why I recommend this item. It lost some movement speed, which sucks, but still, the ability reduction is pretty insane. Then everything else, kind of self-explanatory. Clips got nerfed really hard, so I wouldn't really recommend it. The shield, though, is nice. If enemy, again, is like a very low DPS, and they can't really break through it, and you build this to get up Sunlit Sky, which might be the best item in the row, actually. You have a lot of heal and shielding, so it's very difficult for your opponent to break through your health bar. When you're going for a very high damage build, you still retain some tankiness. Sunlit Sky, I think, is the best item here, because what happens even when you have full HP, obviously you can't heal, but what it does is you gain bonus HP, which helps a lot of your scalings. So that's why I think the item's one of the reasons why this item is very nice. Blade, I guess if you're looking to snowball against some tank. Trinity, I think, is just a better hole breaker. Hole breaker got nerfed for melee champions as well. I think Trinity just does it better. A little less turret damage, but everything else is way better. Terminus Shen likes because he's 50-50 magic physical. So he likes the penetration, and what you can do is you can pair this up together with a Jakshu to get a lot of bonus resistances in longer combat. But here, with just 3 items, with 2 of them being damaged, you actually get a lot of resists. But maybe that's a build you can go for. Now, Experimental Hexblade is not as good as people anticipated it to be, because the problem is, once you get your Shen ult down to like 140 seconds with some ability haste, any additional haste won't really matter. Because the way League works, especially at high elos where the game is a bit more structured, major fights are going to be revolving around objective timers. And so fights will generally have a cooldown of 140 seconds. So when you have your ult down to that cooldown already, let's say, you know, some haste from these items, what's gonna happen is you have it up for every fight anyway. So any additional haste on top of that is not really gonna matter. And then the rest of the stats you just don't use very well. It's only 450 health. And no haste on your basic abilities. So yeah, that's why I wouldn't rate the item very high. And then for the AP items, Nature is actually really insane. Even if you're building tank or anything else. Because your ult has such a high AP ratio, if you can actually get it stacked. Your ult is a Kale ult on whoever you press it on. And later in the game, late game, the HP ratio, the HP AP ratio on your Q is actually going to be really felt. So if you feel like you can just get a lot of kills and or assists even and not die, which is surprisingly good. Then everything else, I mean, you might want to go Liandry Riftmaker if Riot fucked up and it's tank meta and we play tanks on all 5 lanes. Maybe this is the thing. Other than that, it's all just for YouTube content. But yeah, that is my item rundown. Let me know if you like videos like this or would like me to do any other type of content. Thank you for watching, and bye-bye.